To our Northwest Community Television folks, we are going to start our meetings. We'll all get in place. We could. It's, I believe, 5 after 8 o'clock, so we are going to call to order for the Economic Development Authority for the City of Crystal. And first we'll start off with a roll call.
All right. Thank you, Madam President. Commissioner Adams, Commissioner Banks.
Here.
Commissioner Budashevsky.
Here.
Commissioner Deschler.
Here.
Commissioner Kaiser.
Here.
Commissioner LaRoche.
Here.
And Commissioner Parsons.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, John. First, we'll approve the minutes from January 2nd, our annual organizational meeting, and February 19th, 2019 work session, as well as the April 2nd, 2019 work session. Has everyone had a chance to look through? And any discussions? Or would anyone like to make a motion to approve? John?
So moved.
And
Second.
Julie will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, thank you. We've passed the minutes, approved the minutes. Then next, we have a public hearing now. We are going to consider a resolution authorizing the transfer of ownership from 5530 Douglas Drive North, which is the Becker Park East parcel, to the City of Crystal. And John?
All right. Thank you, Madam President. This is should be a fairly straightforward item. I won't go through all the history, but basically the EDA actually owns the easterly parcel that comprises Becker Park. The city owns the westerly parcel. Clearly, this is not going to be a redevelopment site, especially since we just completed the installation of a 2 million plus gallon underwater stormwater system and major park improvements on top of that. So it is probably time to clean up the ownership of this park and have both sides of it, both parcels owned by the City of Crystal. So the purpose of tonight's public hearing is to take any comment on that ownership transfer, and then after hearing any public comment, the EDA is asked to adopt the resolution authorizing the conveyance of that easterly Becker Park parcel from the EDA to the City of Crystal.
Good. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, then we will move to the public hearing, correct? So anyone here interested in speaking, the public hearing has been opened. And seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Okay. Any other discussion about the resolution? Or if anyone would like to make a motion? John?
Make a motion authorizing the transfer of 5530 Douglas Drive North to the City of Crystal.
Thank you. Brendan?
I second that motion.
All right. Seeing none, no others, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have passed the resolution. Thank you. Next is item number 5, an update on upcoming lot availability.
Okay, just one sec
Dan.
to get this up.
We'll stretch while Dan gets his presentation together, right?
Right, yeah. Okay, yeah, this is, the next item on your agenda is just an update on proposed lot sales. This is the first one I'll talk about. It's, the address is 5417 35th Avenue. It's an EDA-owned lot. We've owned it for many years, since 2010. Just one sec here. There we go. Sorry about that. So there it is, 5417 35th. Cub Food Store is located just directly north here, and you can see it's in the kind of the southern area of the city. As I said, it's been owned by the EDA since 2010. There are some soil issues with this that the builder will have to deal with, so that affects the value of the property a little bit. But the greater thing that affects the value is there is an 8-inch water main that was installed by MnDOT several years ago on the west side of the property. And so that makes it very difficult to site a home on the property. This happened more than 20 years ago when the utility reconstruction was coming to this area. In the packet, I had mentioned that staff was going to obtain some estimates to see how if we could relocate that pipe, that water main. And we just today we got an estimate of $125,000 to do that. So it's quite a bit of money, and it's our opinion as staff that it's not really worth it to do that. That would be quite an expense. Just a sort of a related note on this, the house to the east, I'll go back to the house to the east, which is right here, 5409. That is one of the original slab ramblers in the area. We are aware that the house is tipping due to poor soils in the area. You know, as I mentioned earlier, the soils here are an issue. This home next door may end up being a tear down at one point. If we as the EDA were to acquire and demolish it, that would maybe give us the opportunity to work with trying to figure out how to develop both properties for single-family homes, maybe move the property lines a little bit, that sort of thing. So this is one of the things that we'd like to get direction on. Is there's a couple of options for the property. We could sell the lot as is, the 5417, which is the EDA-owned lot, with and we would have an easement dedicated to cover the water main that's on that one side of the property. That's one option. The second option is to continue to hold this property as we've been doing and see what happens at the property next door, 5409, to see if that at one point might be acquired and demolished. And then we could kind of work with developing both properties at that time. So, do you want to have discussion on that now, or should I wait to the end of the presentation?
Before we move on to the other one, I think discussion now would make sense. I have a couple questions. John?
Two questions. First of all, can you just show me exactly whereabouts the water main goes through that property?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think I actually have a graphic. Here it is. Sorry. The graphic here, this is the lot right here. The water main is the blue line right here. And the property line is right here.
Okay.
So it's there's a frontage road right here. So it's almost, it's not quite in the middle of the property, but it's leaning toward that. So.
And then my second question is, based on the width of the lot and our new lot sizes or whatever. I mean, so they could build, because we were going with 50-foot wide or lot widths.
Yeah. It's a lot of record, yep, so they could build on it.
They could build on it the way it is, right? And then what's the width of the lot next to it with the slab rambler?
I'm not sure what that is.
They're typically 75 feet.
75.
Yeah,
Okay.
the original platted lots were all 75 feet.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Great. John asked the one question I was going to ask too, so that's great. The other item is how much, were you saying that the city would pay or potentially the builder would have to pay to move that water line?
The city would have to pay for it. It far exceeds the value of the lot. We would be moving it for utility-related reasons in addition to its impact on the value of the lot. Primarily, it would be to move it away out where it was supposed to have been built back in 2001 or whenever it was that MnDOT did that water main work as part of the 100 freeway project. That's when that error occurred. So you can see the dashed blue line is where it was, per our record plans, where it was supposed to be built.
Okay.
Right here.
So, yeah, we basically want to move it, maybe not quite that far out, but, so it's out of the lot. There are kind of long-term liability reasons to do that someday. But our city engineer we've discussed it, in fact, just this afternoon, and it's a ductile iron pipe, so it's probably got a 100-year life. So there's no imminent reason to relocate the main, but when we get to that neighborhood with our utility reconstruction in about 20 years or so, that would be the logical time to fix that by moving the water main, but not before then.
Yeah, unless it's sold.
Because it's such an expensive standalone project. So, and as Commissioner Budashevsky asked, certainly that lot we're convinced we could sell that lot as is, even with the water main, even with the easement 10 feet east of the water main. That still leaves enough room to build a small footprint house on, presumably the builder would do it on pilings, because there's not enough space to excavate the bad soil and bring in new materials. So it'd probably be on helical piers, like the lot at 2949 Yukon would be our best guess,
Sure.
that building method.
Okay.
So we think we could sell the lot, or if you're not in a hurry to sell the lot, as Dan mentioned, we could wait and see what happens with that neighboring house, and or wait until utility reconstruction does come to that area in 20 years or so, and that kind of solves either way the problem could get solved. the problem of the water main.
And Brendan, I have,
Is there any sense of urgency? There's like any offers on the property? Is there,
I wouldn't call it urgency, but, I mean, we know, we've met with a builder who does work on helical piers, and he's convinced he could build and sell a house on here, even a smaller footprint house. But there is no pressing reason to sell it, other than the market's hot. Maybe you want to get something built on this lot now while the market is strong. But, I mean, the land isn't going anywhere, so, I mean, it isn't urgent, but there is an opportunity to sell it now. I guess I'd put it that way.
yeah, oh, Brendan, go ahead.
I was just saying, it seems like there's a lot of obstacles, I guess, if you will. One, with the water main, I think is a really big issue. It makes, then you become limited. There's the soil issues, and then there's already the house next door. If there isn't, and I guess some sort of, the property value is already low, because of the issues. So, I guess kind of why if there's no need at this point, and why no market values are pretty good, but this seems like there's just it's a problematic property, I guess, if you will.
And before John, I just had a couple questions regarding that. Say if we sold it to a builder, they build a house, 20 years down the road, that main is replaced, would the homeowner be on the hook for that? City would still pay for that?
Yeah, it is a city facility. Even though MnDOT installed it in the wrong place, it's ultimately our responsibility to relocate that main.
Okay.
Now, before we sell this lot to a builder, we would have the easement there, so we have the legal right to keep the water main there as long as we need to.
Okay.
But when the time comes to move it off the property, I mean, and maybe we would at that point decide not to, I don't know, but presumably we'd still want to get it off the property and into the street right of way. That would come at whatever time makes sense to the city, such as the utility reconstruction.
Okay, one more question before John and then Therese. What do you think is the timeline for that shifting house next door?
Well, I first noticed it tipping almost 20 years ago. So I don't know if the tipping has stopped, if it's stabilized. The house from the outside looks okay. But what we also learned from many other homes in that area, the slab ramblers that were built atop the poor soils, is that they do okay for a while, and then it's sort of it's a rapid, it's like an accelerating decay curve in terms of, in some cases, the foundation would snap. It would finally, the stresses would get so great that it would actually break. Or maybe it's already cracked and you just can't see it because there's carpet over it. It's really hard to know. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, that house has had the noticeable tip for as long as I can remember.
Okay.
And I don't have any evidence to think it's getting worse. So I do not know what the timeline would be for that home to potentially become a tear down. It may never be a tear down.
Yeah.
It's sold at least once in that 20 years, at least once. So somebody bought it with the visually obvious tipping and still bought it. So that might say something right there.
Right. Okay, that's good to know. John?
And plus, we've also, a couple of things here, we've maintained that lot, for a long time, and you have an opportunity to, get it out on the market, get something built on it. And our builders have built some pretty cute houses. There's a really narrow lot over by my house that was next to an apartment building, and I thought for sure that lot would never sell, and we sold that lot to them, and they put a really cute house in there, and
Nice.
it just snapped up just like that.
Perfect.
And it really does a lot for the neighborhood, too.
Yeah,
So.
I'm leaning that way too. Therese?
I was just wondering, in that neighborhood, there are a lot of the slab houses. This is right behind Cub, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Why were they built that way? Because the soil was poor?
Ironically, that would be a reason not to build slab homes, because apart from this 5417 lot where the bad soils go deeper, in much of that area, the bad soils were actually fairly shallow. In other words, if you built a normal basement, you'd punch right through the bad stuff and get down to good material. But because they were slab homes, they're sitting on top of this, again, in much of the area, a relatively thin layer of bad material. And that is why so many of them the foundations ended up failing. And most of the homes remaining, this one next door at 5409 is kind of an exception, but most of the ones remaining are on areas where there is no bad soil, and that's why those slab ramblers are still in that area, because the foundations haven't failed.
Any other questions, comments? So, Dan, what would our recommendation be, before we go on to the second item, the second?
I think
lot?
just something as simple, if you want to make the motion, or make a motion that you'd like, which way you would like to proceed. If you want to, here's the two options: either sell the lot now with the easement, or continue to hold on to it and see what happens.
John?
We wrote this not knowing if there'd be consensus among all the members or not, but certainly you could, if there's a difference of opinion among the board, someone could make a motion and then get a second and then take a vote on it, on a proposed direction of either of those two options.
Yeah. What do you guys think? Should we discuss both lots first?
We're paying to maintain the lawn and stuff, right?
Yeah, the mowing, I mean, it's not a lot, but we do have to mow it every year, or obviously more than once. We have to mow it throughout the season.
I prefer to see if we can sell it
Yeah,
and get something built on there.
yeah.
One other question, we don't have to move the water main before the property is
No.
sold and developed, right?
No.
We would just maintain the easement, so at some point,
We could.
Right.
we could.
Yeah.
And so what would cause the water main, the city to go in and move it? Would that be catastrophe or?
Well, so as Mark Ray explained it to me, it's ductile iron. So generally speaking, I mean, it's an even more durable pipe than the cast iron pipes that we're currently replacing in other parts of the city. And we've had water main breaks in some areas with poor soils. Ductile iron's a little bit better, but it hasn't been in use long enough to really know. So it's kind of a guess. And just, even if we have an easement, which we would if we sold this lot, long-term, it's better to have the pipe further from the house because these are pressurized mains. So while it's nothing like the concrete pipe that ruptured in 2 locations in Robbinsdale and literally blew out the street above it, but pressurized water mains, they can erode away the soil underneath. And while it's a low probability risk, but potentially high impact risk if a water main fails. So think about that: low probability but high impact if it does happen. So even if we don't move it now, at some point, he feels strongly that we need to relocate that water main when the time comes, when we're working in that area anyway.
Will we have some warning, like that it's failing, or is it?
No.
No? All right.
It
goes, okay.
Julie?
If it failed, is the city on the hook for selling a property that has a water main, there?
I really can't answer that. I guess the main issue here is that we would fully disclose our knowledge and the easement would be recorded prior to the sale of the lot. It would be in the RFP packet that we'd put out there, the request for proposal packet, so builders would know. There's a water main there, there's a 10-foot easement, and it would just be, we've disclosed everything we know, and we have, with our easement, we have the right to have a water main there, and you're choosing to buy the lot from us and build a house on it. With that knowledge.
And then one last question. I mean, if this was a county faux pas, I probably heard the answer at one point, but I forgot, because it clearly was a county, design mock-up. Why aren't they paying to fix it?
Right. We did go to bat. It was against MnDOT. And if you've ever dealt with a state agency, especially MnDOT, you probably know how that went. Their response was that even though it was their contractor who did the installation, this was a water main replacement that the city had requested as an add-on. Whenever these big highway projects go through a city, the city would have additional work, to be done along with it because they're already tearing up the area.
Right.
So that's why we had it done. The problem was here's what appears to have happened is somebody in the field, whether it was MnDOT's contractor or a MnDOT supervisor, or for all we know, it could have been a city utility employee. Again, we're talking about almost 20 years ago at this point. We don't know who was there, but somebody made a field decision. They saw this vacant land and said, well, it'd be easier, this is speculation on my part, it would be easier just to put the pipe there instead of putting it under the frontage road. And they just saw vacant land. And remember, this is when they were tearing up and rebuilding all of Highway 100.
Right.
So there was all kinds of right-of-way. I mean, they're doing all these things all over this right-of-way. It probably looked to them like MnDOT right-of-way. And my guess is nobody thought to check, wait, that's an actual lot. It's not right-of-way. It's actually a lot. And that's my guess. It was a field decision, and we did not discover it until the first time we tried to sell this lot in 2013, when the builder went out there to investigate the soils and discovered the pipe.
Okay.
That's the first that the pipe came to our attention. And that's when we went to MnDOT, and they basically said, sorry, yeah, it was our contractor, but it was done for you, the city, at your request, and you can't prove that it was our fault. And that's kind of where it ends.
So tough bounce is what they said.
Yes.
Okay. And so for the most part, it looks like the majority of us, Olga, do you feel like it's worth a sale at this point?
With the market as being very strong,
Yeah.
I suppose, yeah.
Great time. Okay.
I really see the reason.
So I think we're a go on that one, and should we continue then on the second lot?
Sure.
Okay.
These are this is the second situation that we have for tonight. These are lots that you spoke about last year. These are 5232, 38, and 5244. It's right adjacent to what's called Sioux Line Park, which is located in this area right here in south. So it's in this area of the city. Last year, the city council declared these lots surplus land that could be developed for single-family homes. There are, again, soil issues with these lots as well. The soil issues here are actually worse than the last lot that we looked at. So again, it's helical piers would probably be likely, just as was done on Yukon. As you can see here, that these two lots, 5232 and 38, are very small. They're about 3,000 square feet each. This is a pretty normal size lot, but these two are very small. So what we are proposing is that we would combine these two lots into one lot. And this would be one home instead of two. These were really intended for townhome lots, and that really isn't a great market in this area. So we propose that a single-family home would be much better fit for this area. And now that we allow accessory dwelling units, somebody could have that in their home as well. So that sort of helps it to be a two-family in some respects. The combination would create a lot that's almost 7,000 square feet instead of the 3,000 foot square lots. The minimum lot size is 6,000, so it would meet that. So it would make it a conforming lot. It would require council approval of a lot consolidation application. So this is the proposed schedule for the sale of these lots. We would do, or all these lots actually, RFP would be posted here this coming week. We would advertise two lots, 5238 and 5244 Scott. We've already kind of talked about the 5417, so that we would also be posting that as an RFP as well. Because of the building challenges, we would not set a minimum price on these. We would just let the builders sort of make an offer to us and see if that seems reasonable, or because there's a lot of challenges as you can see. We would also not ask them to submit their final building plans at this time, because there might be issues to work out. But we would have them submit a concept plan, site plan, and building plan, and then when we go to public hearing in October, then you'd see the final plan. So that's this week. On September 17th, we would have you give. The council would give tentative approval to the builders that have submitted a proposal for these lots. And then we would also have you do the lot consolidation at that time for the two lots on Scott. So that would be all done when all ready to go when the lot is closing. And then October 15th, you would hold a public hearing for the lot sales. The 5238 and 5244 would be held by the city council because they own those lots. And the 5417 35th would be a public hearing by the EDA because that's who owns that lot. So But that's my presentation. If you have any questions about that plan going forward.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Any comments or questions?
No, I
Julie?
like it.
I do too.
Yeah.
Everyone else?
I agree.
Okay? I agree. It's a go.
All right, great. Thanks for the input.
Thank you. All right, and then on to the next item. This will be a closed session under Minnesota State Statute 13D.05 Subdivision 3C1. And I'm just, because I haven't done a closed session
So someone
protocol.
should,
Yeah, we-
oh, someone should make a motion.
As we
to
talk.
close.
Madam President, we just need an EDA member to make we need a motion and a second to close the meeting to consider setting the asking price for EDA lots at 3443 Douglas Drive North and 3443 Edgewood Avenue North.
Okay.
Once that motion's been made and seconded and then carried after a vote, then the control room will put us in closed session and we will switch to a audio recording.
Okay,
And members of the public will need to leave the room. And then once the closed session is done, we'll reopen the meeting.
okay.
So
John.
we need the motion, a second, and a vote to close.
And I think I saw one. Olga?
I'll make the motion. I make a motion to close this meeting pursuant to Minnesota statutes, section 13D.05 subdivision 3C1, to determine the asking price for two EDA lots located at 3443 Douglas Drive North and 3443 Edgewood Avenue North.
Okay, and John, second?
I second that motion.
Okay, thank you. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is now closed. We are back to open meeting, and item number 7 is other business. Is there any other business to present? I see shaking heads, so that's a no. And then lastly, if there's no new business, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Oh, the hand's raised. Brendan?
I make a motion to adjourn the EDA meeting.
Okay, thank you. And a second, John?
I second that motion.
All right, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Good night, everybody. Oh, and